The elves jumped onto the workbench and took up the shoes that were cut out. They began to stitch and sew and hammer. They worked so neatly and so quickly that the shoemaker could hardly believe his eyes. The elves did not stop for a moment until all the cut-out shoes were finished. Then they ran quickly away. The next morning at breakfast, the shoemaker asked his wife, "How can we thank these little elves who have made us so rich and so happy?" "I know what we can do," said his wife. "We can make them new clothes and shoes. Their own clothes are ragged and their feet are bare." During the evenings that followed, the shoemaker and his wife began to make new clothes for the elves. The shoemaker chose the softest leather he could find. He cut out 2 of the tiniest pairs of shoes you have ever seen. Then he stitched the shoes as carefully as ever he could. The shoemaker's wife cut out 2 white shirts, 2 small green jackets, and 2 pairs of trousers to match. She sewed them with tiny stitches. She made 2 little caps, each with a feather in it. She also knitted 2 pairs of wee white stockings. By Christmas Eve, the tiny clothes and shoes were finished. The shoemaker cleared the leather and the tools from his workbench. He and his wife laid their presents on the bench instead of the usual work. Then they hid themselves, as they had done before, and waited to see what the elves would do. Just as the clock struck 12, the door opened quietly, as before. The 2 elves came running in. They still wore old clothes, and their feet were blue with cold. They jumped onto the bench, ready to get to work at once. But there was no leather on the bench, only the tiny clothes. The elves were astonished at first, and then they were delighted. In no time at all they were out of their old clothes. Then, talking and laughing, they dressed themselves in the beautiful new clothes, the green jacket and trousers, the white shirt and stockings, the soft leather shoes, and the little caps with the feathers that nodded as they laughed. In their delight, the little elves skipped and jumped over chairs and benches. Then they joined hands and danced around as they sang, "Now we are boys so fine to see, we need no longer cobblers be." At last they danced happily out of the door. The shoemaker and his wife never saw the little elves again, but from that time good luck was always with them. They were rich and happy for the rest of their lives.